Good morning. Good morning. How are you all doing? As promised, I told you that I would be back for day two at 7 a.m. Eastern Time and 6 a.m. Central. And so today is going to be a continuation of your narrative, okay? For those of you all that are in the challenge, I want to say thank you so much for joining me in this challenge. And I really want your feedback. So please, send me messages. I've already gotten some messages and I love it. I've even gotten some questions, and we'll talk about some of those questions, towards the end of our challenge. If you need them answered instantly, send me a message and just say, yeah, could you talk about this on day three real quick, just to give me some clarity. Absolutely do that and just let me know, and I will answer those questions for you, okay? So, but thank you so much, and I hope so far, you kind of thinking your wheels are turning. Maybe you don't have all the answers right now, and that's okay because you won't. Not on day one, but hopefully by day 21, you'll be on a really good starting track, and we'll be moving forward to creating that best life, whatever that looks like for you. Peace and happiness, just prosperity, just whatever that is for you. We're going to work on moving towards that. So, yesterday I left you with an assignment. I asked you to write your narrative, and I want you to just really be honest about your narrative and who do you say that you are? What traumatic incidents shaped your narrative? And the reason why I asked you to do that is because it's important to understand through what lens do you see? How do you see yourself? How do you see the world? How do you make decisions? And how do you see yourself in the world? Okay, so your narrative defines all those things. And it really is your identity. Okay, so what you tell yourself and who you say you are is your identity. Okay, so let me go back. So define narrative. So again, narrative is the story you tell yourself about who you are or who you will become. And the key word in that is that I want to point out today is the story you tell. It's what you tell yourself. It's a story that you created. And we got to make sure that we understand that it is something that we created. And that causes a couple of things. Okay, so when I was really writing this, I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, so my narrative is something that I created. How so? And, I really went deep into how I created that narrative. And so one of the things I asked you to consider was trauma. And that's because traumatic incidents have a way of affecting us greatly. And we have a way of holding on to those things. And we hold on to those traumatic incidents for a couple of reasons. Number one is most of us, we really don't get the help that we need. We really weren't taught that counseling is okay. And so we live our lives, trying to go through and figure out how to solve it ourselves. And you already know what happens with that. It's probably one of those things that we're going to bury and we're going to use something to help numb the pain, or we're going to try to forget about the pain and just keep it very deep down inside and go on with our life and create a different narrative. All the while, it's still there and it's shaping everything that you see. And I'm going to give you some examples because I'm going to use myself and how I drew out how my narrative really has shaped my life for many years. And when I changed my narrative, that's when my life started changing. It was amazing how that happened. I changed my narrative, my direction started changing, my perception started changing, my identity started changing. Things just started turning around for me. Okay? So let me go back to this. So narrative is your guide. It is basically what you use to make your decisions. It's your perception. It's your identity. And it's pretty much what you focus on. Okay, so your narrative is what you're focusing on. And the reason why it's important to pay attention to your narrative is because basically having a narrative sets limits. So when I gave you my three examples of my narrative, which are, here's the three things, and I'm going to read this off the paper because I need to give y'all some examples. So the first thing was my narrative was I have a life about survival. Most of my life I have had to live in survival mode. And so that's part of my narrative. And there's trauma associated with that survival as well. Okay. But on this one, I'm not going to go into that, but I'm going to at least give you the example. Second was rejection from people, family, friends, jobs, just rejection in general. Okay. And then third was whatever my weight issues were. That was the other thing that was part of my narrative. So I have these three things that are part of my narrative. And basically, these three things are what I focus on. It's how I see myself, is the limits on how I see myself becoming. So if I feel like that I'm in survival mode all the time, what happens when a person's in survival mode all the time? So number one, you're gonna at some point, you're gonna be tired. Survival mode is not gonna work on every level. And it hasn't. It greatly affected me on so many levels because it's just not a strategy that works on every level. Survival is just what it is. It's temporary. You can't live in that state long term. Okay? So, of course, I'm going to make decisions out of survival instead of decisions out of long term. Does that make sense? So, when I make those decisions, it's short term decisions, but they should have been long term decisions. So, that didn't work out well. And then the second piece is the rejection. And so, since rejection is part of my narrative, rejection has played a role like this. I now assume, or I used to, but I used to assume that everybody was going to reject me. So I had a wall up. So you could never really get to know who I was because I needed to stop, that pain from feeling rejected. Or I did not try as many things as I should have tried for the fear of rejection. Okay, because again, I told you, your narrative, it shapes everything, it limits everything, and it's your guide. Whether you know you're using it or not, it's still there. Okay. And so then the third thing we'll talk about is my weight issues and how the weight issues guided me and was my lens, it was my perception, it was how I saw things in life. So if I have an issue with my weight, we all know what that does, especially for those of us that have been dealing with weight since childhood and it's been a reoccurring thing, you know what it can do to you. So the first thing is it breeds insecurity. You have low self-worth because you feel like your weight is tied to your self-worth and you're not comfortable being out and being seen, not for real. I mean, we do it because we have to. We go to work, or we go to some social events, especially if you're in a social occupation or a social in the community, you still go. But the truth be told, you're not happy and sometimes you're quite bitter and you don't treat people well because you don't feel well. Okay, so again, that's part of your narrative. So my question for you is, if all these things, we're going to use me as an example, okay, because I'm being transparent about it. This is what I was dealing with in the past. If all those things were my narrative, how could I live a happy and prosperous life? Because again, your narrative is the story you tell yourself about who you are. So how can I make decisions to set me up for a happy and prosperous life? And how can I see myself in the future having a happy and prosperous life? You can't. You have to really sit down and think about, what are you telling yourself is your narrative? What narrative are you telling yourself? And then I want you to think about this. Basically, what if your narrative is not the truth? Because I already found one reason that tells me that there is a possibility that my narrative is not true. And that was in the definition. The definition is a story you tell yourself. So unless I'm perfect and I know everything and I'm of great wisdom, which I do have a little bit of wisdom, but I'm not of great wisdom, then there's a possibility that my narrative may be wrong. And that changes everything. When you really sit back and you think about that your narrative might not really be totally true. It's what you decided to focus on. It's the baggage you brought with yourself. And, again, like I said, it's because multiple reasons, but some of the main reasons are because we don't really reach out for help, or we don't really know that we can change our narrative. I didn't. But when I figured that out, it was life changing. And that's why I want to share it with you, because your narrative means everything. It's your guide. It's what you live by. It's how you see life. It's how you see the world. Okay. So if it's possible that the narrative is not true, then that lets me know that your narrative is fluid. It can be changed. There's a chance I might need to change my narrative in each season. Okay, so consider that. So, what I would like for you to do is, I want you to consider your narrative as your strength, not your enemy. So, in the past, if your narrative has been that of trials and tribulations and challenges, flip it. Okay, so here's how I flipped it. So, here's what I thought about. I said, well, what if, my survival, even though, it's not a positive thing, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't have made it this far. Let me tell you something. If I didn't have the ability to survive in survival mode, or if I hadn't experienced that most of my life, there have been some things, y'all, that in the last 2 years would have took me out if I did not have that ability and hadn't strengthened myself to survive. So it's not all negative, but that was how I chose to see it. There's no way that that's all the negative. But if that's how you choose to see it, and that's the story you choose to tell yourself, then that's the negative of it. And then let's talk about, the rejection piece. Now, look, I have heard many sermons. I've heard many motivational speeches that rejection will build you. Okay. It will build you into an awesome person. It will make you really sit back with who you are and be comfortable with who you are. And also, you got to understand that when people reject you, this is what was profound for me. And it sounds so simple, but when people reject you, it's something wrong with them. It's not me. It's something wrong with you. So I'm not going to allow you to project whatever issues you've got going on me. So every time I allow rejection to make me stop going forward, or to make me forget about the queen that I am, or to make me forget about whose I am, I have to remind myself, no, I'm not going to accept what you're trying to put on me. I'm fine. There are some areas I need to improve, and I'm working on that. But you don't have to accept rejection as your identity. Okay? So now that I've given you some examples, and you can see how your narrative can affect you, and it can change your lens and how you see yourself, how you see your life, how you can move forward, the goals that you set. You're not going to be setting high goals if your narrative is that of limitations. So we've got to think about this narrative, okay? So before I leave you today, I'm going to leave you with an action, okay? Tonight, for the next 24 hours, rewrite your narrative. And I need you to rewrite your narrative from an angle of strength. Your narrative is not your enemy. If your narrative is negative, you got to reevaluate that. Not saying that those traumatic incidents didn't happen. I'm not saying that. But why are you focused on that? That's what keeps you in the dark place. Why do you choose to live with that and bring it with you? Why do you choose to stay in these bad relationships? Why do you choose to keep letting your family abuse you and make you feel like you're not anything? Why do you keep staying at a job that doesn't value you, and you go in it every day and spend 8 to 10 to 12 hours, and you come home miserable, you have nothing left for your family? Your narrative is what will make you believe that you need to stay in certain situations, and I'm here to tell you, you don't. It's what you told yourself. You can actually change it. You can change it. It's not the truth. Okay, so for the next 24 hours, I want you to rewrite your narrative. Watch what you focus on. Don't focus on trauma. Focus on how you can turn the positive into the negative so that it can propel you to move forward. Okay, so rewrite your narrative. Watch what you focus on. And also remember that your narrative is your strength. It's not your enemy. We need it to be our strength. The world is hard enough. Things that we go through, the trials and tribulations, stuff that we experience, that's hard enough. We do not need our foundation, our narrative to be our enemy. It must be our strength. Okay, so rewrite your narrative for the next 24 hours. And day 3, I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about what that next step looks like. It's the next piece of the puzzle that we've got to do and we've got to evaluate as we move forward. So again, thank you all for joining. And I will try to post this video again. I think it stays on my timeline, but if not, I'm going to try to post it again. For those of you that didn't get to join me this morning because you have other things that you needed to do. And I understand that. Just as long as you get the video in every day, because we got to make sure that we're committed to it. Because sometimes consistency means a lot. And I understood that in those 21 days, that was one of the things that I did need to focus on was my consistency to stay committed when my emotions tell me not to. Okay, so stay committed. Let's make it to the end of these 21 days. And even if you can't get up at 7 or 6 a.m. in the morning, the video is still posted and you can watch it, okay? So thank you again. Love y'all, and I appreciate y'all for joining. And this is day 2 because we're moving forward. We're making some big changes. We're not going to wait to 2020, even though that's a year of clear vision, but we're not going to wait to 2020. One of my friends is creating something so awesome, y'all, in 2020, and I'm going to, hopefully she's going to let me reveal it to y'all when she gets it all together, but she's an awesome queen, and so I can share that with you all too as she gets that ready for 2020. So again, love you guys, have a good day, and rewrite your narrative tonight and rewrite it from the point of it's your strength and not your enemy. Thank you. Bye.